If we have a facilitator or, oh, absolutely. You're more than welcome to share audio and video.
Sorry, I just wasn't sure if you wanted us to share.
Oh, you absolutely can. No, you absolutely can. I just didn't know if someone was going to come on and facilitate or if I can just like go.
I'm sure you can just go.
Okay, cool, cool. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Tika Douthit, and I hail from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I currently reside in Kernersville, born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and currently am an assistant professor of music in music business at Winston-Salem State and assistant director of bands. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about navigating my transgender experience through higher education, being a person of color and working at an HBCU, which is a very interesting thing, I believe, in and of itself, just based out of my own background. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of context on who I am, born and raised in Winston-Salem, in a Black neighborhood of homeowners. So at that time, I guess you could say it was like, middle class, even though I'm certain at this point when it's comparative to what we see as current standards, it would appear to be more on the poverty line, honestly. But it is a neighborhood of homeowners, and I went to several schools that were, I would say, predominantly white. I was bussed out of my neighborhood, and so I had a very interesting experience in education growing up. Very, very good schools, very well prepared, and went on to go to college. And that's kind of where I had my first experience coming out towards the end of my well, actually, it was the end of my junior year, and I was pledging an organization, and began to understand and really experience, the strength of what was going on inside of me. So that was what my first coming out was at towards the end of undergrad and going into my final semester of school, and then to come home to student teach. So it was kind of alarming time, but exciting, exploratory. And I remember having a very tough coming out, coming out in layers, telling a couple of friends here or there. But the big, huge thing, of course, was telling my family, telling my mom particularly. And that was my first big milestone. And needless to say, it wasn't well received. So I had this kind of belief about what it is to be coming out anyway. And then I start teaching, and it was affirmed, so I felt like I had to hide, had to stuff things down in the South here, in the educational system, particularly public school. It really felt like it just was tough. And also, you have these milestone memories of things in your life, in terms of like relating to your sexuality. And I just kind of had maybe my third or fourth one in my student teaching experience. And so I already kind of had a negative feeling about how to approach it, how to deal with being gay and teaching public school already. It was already a big thing. And so I continued to try to go with the flow, if you will, fit into the culture of what the surroundings were. And but again, it really just kind of resulted in me hiding a lot more. And then my school switched to uniforms, which was okay because it was like polos and khakis. And it allowed me to kind of get comfortable, or at least take a breath, you know, but I still felt that sort of oppressive, unfair existence, if you will, that I know my hetero colleagues didn't have to deal with. And were able to share openly about their relationships and marriages and families. And it was the norm, you know, and having to feel a little strange about that, you know, and especially in front of the students. So that was kind of a weird space that you're always navigating. Kids are curious, and middle school students, you know, they're very bold in the things that they ask. They don't care, you know, and so I almost didn't know what to do. And at first I just tried to avoid it, but then it became a point where I'm like, dude, you know, this is real life. And especially as you start to see some of them coming to terms with themselves, you know, you start to have moments of honesty here and there, but then you have weird responses to those moments of honesty, which is kind of the negative situation that I experienced in student teaching. So it was like, you know what, I don't even know if this is even worth it. And I think the assumption that I had made going into higher education was that I wouldn't have to deal with that. I thought that going into higher education, it would be a lot freer. You know, I had some time to understand a bit more about things and culture, and to evolve and grow as an adult a little bit more. But I also began to notice that there was a level of discomfort around things. And even as I began to do higher ed band work, I felt this like expectation, I guess because I was working at an HBCU, I felt this expectation that I was supposed to fit inside of this feminine, oppressive type of culture. And I just couldn't do it anymore. You know what I mean? Like I really just couldn't do it anymore. And I think it kind of at first was tough, but I remember, you know, again, going through one of those major milestones, just making the decision, you know, one day I'm going to really just wear a tie to work, and I'm just going to be done with this craziness, and it's just going to be out there. And it was the most frightening moment, you know, that I'd ever faced. Like, okay, this is going to happen. And so trying to just sort of navigate through making those types of choices, levels of being out and in public throughout that experience has always sort of just been part of what was going on as I grew and got more affirmed in who I was. But so then in this last quarter of life, as I really reached this stage of fullness, and then going through some life changes and making some real determining factors about where I am and who I am, and also recognizing on the backside of the third degree, because now I've gotten this last degree, and again, experiencing yet more female oppressive culture, especially being a flute player, and especially in a classically based program, and trying to get a doctorate in higher education. It was quite something. So of course the expectation at that point is to dress a certain way for performances and concerts, things like that. And that probably was my final straw. You know, it was more of a come to Jesus moment for me. And where it really kind of rooted in another monumental oppressive moment. I had a professor who was actually gay, I think, and identified as gay. And I believe even their partner was there. And so the thing that got me, I guess, was there was an expectation around how I should dress for a presentation for class, you know, and it was, I guess, maybe not as formal or as feminine as my concert attire, which I feel like I kind of had to do, especially oftentimes in solo recital. But I just wasn't willing for class. I wasn't willing. I was not willing. And I threw on what I felt like was a nice outfit, a nice something with khakis, I'm sure, and some type of button-up shirt and probably a blazer or something like that. And I remember her making a comment specifically about my dress in my presentation, and also making a comment that said, you're going to have at least one outfit in the closet if you plan to get a job down here, if you plan to work down here. And this is coming from someone who is gay and a professor, doctorate, a white female. And I just was blown away by that. And so, of course, that was something that really sort of pressed upon me to not force my will. And I guess it kind of caused sort of a damper on my experience too, because again, I had always characterized higher education as this place of freedom, coming from an undergraduate experience that was free and freeing. And then to go into the real world, so to speak, and yet again, not really be free. And then working much more at an HBCU, which has its own separate type of culture, is very different. And so I started to really kind of come to terms with these feelings, particularly surrounding transition around 2018, 2019. It was really kind of growing in the pit of my stomach. And I was already in therapy. We do therapy. I was already in therapy. And I was starting to sort of hit a wall with my therapist in this area. And she was just like, are you trans? Like, she asked me, she was like, are you trans? And I was like, what? What? Like there was a thing that I knew, but we didn't talk about it. It just was. But I think there was always this underlying insistence about pronouns. And then also having been married, having a certain privilege at home, that I was able to have an existence in a certain space without necessarily having to have it all the time. So I was sort of budgeting my way through that a bit. And I think there was a profound understanding of this is real life. And when that was lost, the understanding of who I was and who I needed to be for real in life was really becoming something that had to be regurgitated and dealt with, like then and there. And so I found a therapist that was a specialist in trans identities, and that process was really intense. Just getting to a point of, one, it was like amazing alignment. Like I finally felt aligned. And then two, so afraid of what that looked like, particularly trying to be a professional in higher education and, surrounding the nature of our work and the ways that we still do quite a bit of recruiting and things like that, dealing with students. It just seemed impossible. It seemed like this, I don't know how this is going to be a thing, but I just, really took it one step at a time. And I think it was maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months into therapy when I really became affirmed in my pronouns. And it was at that time that I made the decision, that if it were possible, I would like to try to move forward with hormone therapy, whatever that looked like. Also coming into full-time work, full-time professorship at the school, and actually having real live health insurance, even though that was an eye-opening experience in that, I can get all of the things but what I need for gender-affirming therapies. But they are covering portions of things. So it's not awful, but it's just an interesting and eye-opening experience. And but I am grateful to be under great medical care. And then I began hormone therapy in March of 2020. And so I am now about a year and some change on testosterone. And I'm very, very excited about a lot of the changes that I'm experiencing, particularly, I don't know if you could tell in the voice, but also just I've had a good shifting of some structure here in my face, and other things that are just, it's just wonderful. I feel wonderful, and I feel sexy for real, not like in a pretend way. I finally feel like who I'm supposed to be. And I also feel like the person that shows up in the room, this is the person that's always been trying to show up in the room. And now it doesn't matter if you accept him or not, he's here. So you're just gonna have to figure out how to deal with it. But even in the educational space, it was still very challenging to sort of get into that level of confidence, and it is still developing. And so, March of 2020, I was still kind of wet around the ears, but I did notice a few things were starting to happen over summer. And then there was that release of the new LGBT law protecting trans people in the workspace. And I got hit up about an interview. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess. I mean, I didn't think of myself as in the closet. I just didn't know I was going to be identified as a transgender man across Spectrum News in North Carolina. So it just didn't dawn on me that that was what was about to actually happen. And so I was like out in the summer, and it was amazing and scary. But what it was it was a very powerful affirmation of the fact that I no longer could try to balance these two identities. I couldn't be she over here to make people comfortable when the world was meeting him and starting to accept him and understand him as he is, even in the youthfulness of what my transition was at that time. So I made a decision to be out at work. And that conversation had actually started to happen in layers as I was going through therapy prior to that previous school year. So, because this was way before COVID, probably I would say August of 2019, right after I'd started therapy, I started to sort of talk about it with a few of my closer colleagues that I tend to work with more than others. And so I was kind of coming out, but I think they didn't really take it seriously. You know what I mean? I don't think they really got it, so to speak. And then we go into COVID, and then we come back in fall of 2020 on Zoom, and it's like he, him, no, I'm serious. He, him, no, please. My pronouns are he, him. And like, it's really who is in front of you now. So please understand that. And then we were still meeting in person for our large ensemble. So, my first introductions of the fall semester, were he, him. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience too with the students, because they were very affirming of all the people. It's really the faculty that seem to struggle more so than the students. There's always slips here and there, but we always navigate through them gracefully. But I had made that decision in fall of 2020 to affirm myself through email, through my syllabi, through my Zoom identification. And this is before I really even understood, the waves that I might be creating, trying to be gentle in my corrections and emails to people, and emails where I'm seeing a chain of emails where people are referring to me, and just trying to be gentle still with corrections, but very firm about correcting. And I've noticed that some people who really don't like it when I correct them self-correct. They self-correct, but they still slip, I guess it's their own stuff. I can't work through everybody's junk, but that's kind of the gist of where I am at this point, and very excited about, navigating through some newer experiences in terms of LGBT work in the state of North Carolina, and of just recently joined the board of Equality NC. That's why I wasn't able to be at some of the earlier sessions today, because I was in meetings with Equality NC, and am just trying to learn what it is to sort of take up this intersection of Black with a little privilege, to be honest. I feel like having degrees, I have some privilege, and trans experience, where I identify as a transmasculine, transmale person in a society and in an environment that has a very clear and strict monolithic picture of what a Black man looks like and who a Black man is. And so every day, you know, I never know how the experience can be or what it's like in certain situations. And then it's interesting because most of these people I've worked with for the past 16, 17 years, they know me. And many of them have even known me before I came to the university. So it's hard to be hard on them, if you will, but also at the same time, firm and clear to affirm myself so that they understand what that looks like for me. And so that I can be in an environment where I can continue to thrive because I love working there and I love the environment that it can be. And I just want us to grasp and embrace as much diversity, equity, and inclusion as we can. So, but that was a lot of talking. I just want to take a break for a second. I didn't know if anybody had anything they wanted to say or contribute in this space.
I just want to throw Alicia out there and let you know that she also works in higher ed, so that you have that context. You're welcome.
Awesome. So you probably know about how intense the political culture is there, and you know, and I know for me, I'm navigating my way through the pressures of junior faculty and tenure and promotion. I just did reappointment, and you know, have next levels to go. So it's like, woo, you've got to tread a thin line. You can't keep, you know, you got to be careful. You can't offend people, but you've got to take up the space that you are supposed to take up, I think.
I think that's so important. You know, I've seen a shift. So I went to the community college I currently work at as a student, and now on the staff side of things, it's just incredible how, you know, our students are offered this experience that is very freeing and affirming, and sometimes, you know, gives them these beautiful opportunities for growth. Then you come to the staff side of things, and it's like, wow, the amount of politics on this side is exhausting. And then, you know, the fight for equity. I mean, when when you're talking about your experience, like, I mean, I can't put myself in your shoes, but I would hope that in higher education, like as a person who wants to have more voices at the table, like we would make opportunities for everybody so that, you know, if somebody is transitioning, they have the opportunity to feel like their employer is a safe place to do that. I can't also imagine in the music industry, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So, I mean, I really do appreciate your story and you being vulnerable and sharing that with us today. Dr. Douthit, like I really want you to know how much I appreciate that.
Thank you. And Tika is fine. You know, goodness, it's Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. But yeah, Tika is fine, and only for a short time. Trying to work my way out of that as well too. So just to speak to how young I am in the process, but just excited about how it evolves, and grateful, like so grateful to be in it. Just so grateful to be in it. So, but yeah, I agree. I think one of the best parts of higher education is servicing the students. You know what I mean? We're there for the students. We're there to advocate for them. We're there to give them the experience they're desiring at this level of education, and engage new things and hopefully broadening their understanding and their scope. And then we have sometimes the challenge of, you know, people who often have pretty much created the stamp on how that should be done and have done it successfully for a long time, and it looks good too. But then, like, the kids change, right? The students changed, and I think we've seen I've been there about 16, 17 years. I have definitely seen, and particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, a marked change in the type of student that we are now teaching. And the way that we have to navigate through different things, technology, existence. And there are just certain things that we have to learn to evolve into, even when we, have cornered the market on the discipline. Education itself is always evolving, and the way we approach it. And then you mentioned the industry. Like, I just try to have fun. I'm grateful for opportunities and experiences that I get to do with different things. And then sometimes I, get motivated and inspired and make my own space and do some things that I want to do from time to time. But I do enjoy that the industry is kind. Musicians are kind and kind-hearted people. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about working in my department, that even though there is this tough thing that we do navigate through often, I do feel valued. And even in just my recent reappointment, affirmed in my pronouns, my work detailed and celebrated. I know that what I am doing is good and I'm contributing good. And that allows me, the inspiration to go out and play the music and to have the fun. And then that inspires the conversations of classroom. So to me, it's all comprehensive. It's all one big picture that should fit together. And that is my personal teaching philosophy for what I am as an educator and a performer, and must have both parts, and diverse work, not just commercial work, but musical theater work, classical symphony work, all of the work. I need all of the work. So to feel really complete. And I know that there is gifting in that. I know there's purpose in that. I know that there's always purpose in those connections. And just excited, and hopefully am teaching the students how to make those pathways and to be bold and to try things and trust themselves, and and not to turn into some crotchety old folks like the people that we all want to avoid sometimes, but to just stay inspired, stay in the discipline, but stay in the craft of the discipline, and to stay inspired.
So is there some say we were your colleagues, that would make your experience of gender identity and gender discovery more affirming and more accepting, like in just generalities, I guess?
In general, I mean, there's only so much people can really do. A bathroom is always awesome. That's like it's like, oh, it's beautiful to just be affirmed. But if not, you're just gonna have to make space in the men's room. I'm coming in there. And then secondly, I think pronouns are a big deal. Like, I just think it's a sign of respect, whether you understand the process or not, whether you agree or believe in the process or not. I just think that affirmation of pronouns is very important. Affirmation of name change when it takes place would be very important. And I know that's going to be hard for some people. Like I said, I've worked with several folks for many, many, many years. But I also do feel like I am changing. Like, so much of me is changing, even though the core of me is the same. And I think that the change of name will be necessary. And it'll be an adjustment for myself as well. Nobody's having to adjust to these changes more than I am. So, that's my selfish piece. And I think that, I'm at this point deserving of that. So that's where I kind of think is most helpful. And then 2, not being afraid to, 3, not being afraid to ask questions. Like, sometimes people just need to ask questions. And I want to be someone who is approachable and who is transparent, sometimes painfully so, sometimes oversharingly so. But I am painfully transparent, and there's nothing that I wouldn't share honestly about my experience. I'm so happy to be in it, but also, just in terms of helping people to get comfortable, so to speak, with what's going on. I'm available to talk about those things and to have conversation and to answer questions. All right. So, yeah. I think one of the bigger things that I'm looking at in terms of my experience from this point forward now is really trying to bring in some things to campus if possible, and to be a part of hopefully some widespread diversity, equity, and inclusion um, practices and training for faculty, and also staff and students. I think it would be very helpful for us. I think it is taboo. And I think sometimes we try to understand the LGBT, but we don't even really do a great job of that. So I know the T is absolutely kind of not, it's hard to talk about. But there is such a push right now, like diversity, equity, inclusion is one of those key phrases right now, along with high impact practices and strategic planning, in higher education. And so it's like you've got to find a way to really make this an authentic experience where it is valuable and it helps people. And okay, so maybe everyone may not buy in, but it is important that at least folks become exposed to the information. We train for everything else, literally. We literally do. And including, Title IX every year, in certain instances. So I feel like it's one of those conversations that we must have, because sometimes people still at this age are not aware of their biases. A lot of their behaviors and choices and decisions are unconscious. They make statements that are, you know, transphobic, for lack of better words, and also homophobic and anti-LGBT. And they think they're being diverse when they're really not even at all making one step towards inclusivity. And we've got to make sure that people understand the differences in those nuances, because, it's like the bare minimum type of stuff. And yet, and still, when it's about social justice and when it's about race, we're ready to get going and rile up the troops and protest and march. But, then turn right around and become the oppressors. So I have a lot to say about those kinds of moments. And I really do believe that we have a lot more work to do in the African American community, specifically in academia, because there is an elitist type of environment there, and yet there is quite a closed-minded culture in some spaces. And I'm saying some spaces because at other schools there's differences, different nuances, and I've seen that because I've seen things posted on social media where their LGBT groups are very visible, very active, very supported, and are doing large scale projects, versus other groups that are barely getting mentioned, space, budget, all of that, programming, planning. And so we have to recognize that, when we talk about equity, that is what it looks like is, do these groups on campus get the same amount of support and attention and sponsorship as all of the others? So
I have a question.
sure.
I was just gonna ask. I was speaking to a group on Thursday, and we were talking kind of about high school age, but I think it could apply, I guess, to college campuses. Talking about that teacher, that professor who um, themselves kind of manifested as safe space for students. You have that room, that office, that there's always students in there because they know that person provide sanctuary for them. Um, Now I'm thinking about it from a different context. When we do have more um, students who are transitioning, the importance of having some person who provide safe space, especially on campus. The reason that it came up, we were talking about with schools being shuttered due to COVID, you know, kids not having access to those places where they can go and feel safe and
Mhm.
talk.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm now thinking about it in the context of a college campus.
Mhm.
Could you speak to how important that is? And do you think that as you continue to grow, you know, if that would be your role on campus or the role that you would take on?
Um, that's just how it goes. I think in band anyway. I've always been a band director, and so that space has always been a thing. And that space was provided to me growing up. As a kid growing up in band, I've always had that person to go to, and they've been different people, but it's always the same deal because it's like your music teachers work harder than other people, and you see the planning and the detail that has to go into just basic concert preparation. They're always there, and they're always encouraging you to practice and make space for you to practice. And I think we do that so much in band now on the college level. We do spend time in our offices more. We do spend later evenings in the building. We do hang around sometimes just to make sure everybody's gotten themselves out of there and can go home. And then we, lock and secure things. So I know that we are often there a lot longer than others. I love that space. We make jokes about it in academia, and some folks call it the dean of feelings. You have to be the dean of feelings, but you do, because when a student isn't well, they can't perform. And when a student doesn't feel cared for, they can't love and belong and thrive in community. And so we have to help them because a lot of times they are in a space of identifying as well. Even though we look at this as a big thing, sometimes just leaving high school and becoming a college student is a monumental change in identity for students. They go from being very important to not being seen at all. And that is earth shattering in sometimes the ways they respond to that, how they act out in that or act in that. And we have to be there to support them, to know that they have an extended family, to know that they have support, and that they have people that care about them, that we will make sure someone will see about their needs. If they've got to go to the grocery store, if they need to go buy some socks, whatever it is, we're going to make sure that that happens for you, and that your basic needs are taken care of so that you can function and thrive. And I know that that has probably been one of the hardest things, and absolutely lost in COVID, is office hours, real live contact in office hours, because we're all remote to a certain extent. And I know I am 90% remote. I go to work for a couple of hours once a week to do ensembles. And, that opportunity is gone. So, and I know a lot of students are managing more, doing more, and even a few have called, a few have texted. So I know some of them have those moments of just, and are trying to figure out what to do because school has changed so drastically for many of them. But my prayer is that, we get back soon and safely. I want us to be safe and safe together. But I do want us to be available. And I, as the semester gets hectic, as we get into the end of the semester, in particular in the music department, we've got more performances and things going on. So I'm having to go to work more frequently now. And you feel that energy of life trying so hard to come back. You feel the sunshine or something about it has brought folks out of their hidey holes. And, the parking lots are starting to fill a little bit. You're starting to see people on campus a little more. Everybody's masked up, but you're seeing them. It's not like a ghost town. And you can see how that energy is trying so hard, even on a Friday afternoon, to thrive. And so we know we need community. We need community. We value community. Even if we need a 2-second vent session by the vending machine, or, even as faculty, we need that community. So hopefully we'll be able to get back soon and continue to provide that space and continue to provide that support. And in the interim, I have been doing class wellness checks. You know, you just have to take some time away from work and check in with the students and see where they are and how they are and what they need. And is there a way I can be flexible with certain things? Can I push this assignment back, and can I guide you through this one and push this back a couple of days and give us a little more time to think it through and some support in how to approach it, and kind of take some of that stress and anxiety off of your shoulders as you navigate through your emotions about where you are and your own stress and how you're navigating all this virtual work. So wellness checks have become a thing, and they really do help a lot. It really gives you a sense of the temperature of how folks are, but it's nothing like, you know, your favorites. It's nothing like those kids that come by just to see you because, you know, y'all just get each other. You know what I mean? And so I miss a lot of those guys.
Dr. Douthit, I want to say thank you for those. Like, a lot of professors do not put in that type of time and energy into their students. I mean, there are a few, but it's not the norm. So I just want to say, from a student-facing perspective and working with students, the students that you do that for recognize it, and they love you more for doing things like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think the pandemic has definitely stretched us all, but it's also been a good time for me in terms of just redesigning things, rethinking things, getting a fresh perspective on what is real hybrid teaching, online teaching. How can we get more engagement in virtual learning? And so I'm kind of excited about getting back face to face and really sort of shifting how I'm approaching the use of technology in the face to face setting. Looking forward to just being innovative and trying to include as much multimedia as I can, and just fun stuff. Like, I think that's one of the best gifts that I've gotten out of this time of shifting. I thought Zoom was fun. It's cool to use the breakout rooms and all of that. But I've also gotten very excited about just redesigning and reimagining assignments. And that has been really fun. And I probably wouldn't have had the time to do that otherwise, you know, because now we're just sort of sitting here all day, you know, doing this. But it's been rewarding. Well, but that's pretty much what I have to share. And I don't know if you guys have any other questions about anything, or if there's anything in particular about what I do that might spur a question.
I came in late, and I apologize for that. So I kind of, can you hear me all right?
Can you turn your volume up a little?
Can you hear me here? Can you hear me here?
A little better.
I'm having bizarre hardware problems, but if you can hear me right now, good.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
So I missed the whole first part of this, and I apologize, but if I'm here to talk about transgender experiences in a professional setting, and it's my understanding that you're out at work.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on stealth, and should that opportunity present, would you take it?
Whew, that's a tough one, because let me tell you something. This is hard. Okay, this is hard.
Yeah.
I felt like, because I'm already a band director and at a school where band is so important and such an important part of the culture, I didn't know how to be stealth. I don't know how to be stealth in it. I didn't know how that would be an option, whether I just decide to be trans and not change my name or not insist on pronouns. I don't even know what that looks like. I guess it would just be letting everybody be cool. But for me, it's just, I have to have the pronoun at this point in my part of the journey, really for sanity now. So I don't look like what people, you know, associate with male features. I may not even have a ton of facial hair and all the things. So I know that's a challenge for folks, and I know it's a challenge for Black folks in particular. So I don't know. I think it's up to the person, and I think it's also dependent upon their journey. Because if you get an opportunity to go somewhere and start over and have a fresh self, I'm sure that would lend to that experience. But I think part of my issue is that I'm in my hometown, born and raised, and it's like very hard to go anywhere where people don't know me. But at the same time, sometimes I pass, particularly with the voice now, it's like becoming more prominent. But, you know, stealth would have been glorious, but I don't know. I imagine it would have had different kinds of pressures, right? So being stealth, not being able to really say anything about it, and then figuring out how to navigate through the non-binary part of that, you know, where it's really where you're really kind of sort of meshing between both genders. I'm very curious how a person of stealth would even navigate that space.
I mean, what's my experience? It's uncomfortable, and at some point, I imagine in your life you'll have, you know, at some point like you turn the tide instead of like coming out in one way, you have to come out in another way, and when you're assumed, you know, the target transition, I don't know, whatever, and then you have to come out the other way. So it's like
Mm.
that's such a navigating the initial transition in a professional workspace to me is is more than I could have handled.
It is tough. It is tough, and I understand too. You know, it probably is easier to do it younger, to be honest. And I just had so much fear. You know, we had so much negative belief systems and structures around trans people at that time, and almost not even in the conversation. But if it was in the conversation, it was never any kind of positive or affirming talk. And so, you know, there was the notion and understanding that, you know, this is going to come with something, or this will be heavy in some ways. And even in therapy, learning and knowing you're going to lose people. Everyone is not going to be able to be on this part of your journey with you. And that is okay, because nothing is more important than this journey at this stage in my life. Other than my career, you know, which I love, but I feel like God has really, really guided me and blessed me in that. Have had nothing but just wonderful purpose ever since I started in this profession, and have had nothing but success in growing in this profession. So I believe that I have made the space that I'm supposed to make for myself here, and I don't think it can really be taken from me. You know, I think we are here for a reason. We're here to do a work, and we have a very divine purpose alongside our physical purpose. And when we're intended for those kinds of spaces and those types of assignments, God equips us. And if you'd asked me about this 4, 5, 6 years ago, I'd have been like, no, man, no, there's no way that that is possible, you know. But to be here and to be experiencing it every day, and to be experiencing this freedom and this joy, I can't hardly remember how I was living before, you know. Like, I almost don't know what I was doing before.
Waiting.
Yeah. Yeah. Much more like a pressure cooker.
So did so as your employer, did you feel like your employer was ready, or like you had to like bring them along?
Well, that was an interesting time in our particular area, because we had a change of leadership taking place. And so as a result of that, you know, there was a little bit of muddy water, but we had new leadership in place coming into fall 2020. So that was kind of good for me, and I've been nothing but affirmed from our new leadership. And even from my colleagues, even as they wrestle in the spaces that they wrestle, they've been affirming. And so I can only be appreciative and work towards being patient, but firm. I'm firm. And they know I'm a firm person because we've worked together for years. So they know when it's fun and games and when it's serious, I think.
So, Dr. Douthit, can I ask you more of a personal question, I guess?
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on cis folks working in trans spaces? So I have been really on the fence about my doctoral program. Um, and one of the areas I really have worked hard in the community college that I'm in, and my master's was on higher ed inclusivity for trans folks. And I really was looking to expand upon that in the doctoral program, focusing
Mm.
on inclusivity in learning management systems. So as a cis person, is this a space that I should occupy or not? And feel free to be brutally honest.
I mean, I think any good work is well received, and of course we need allies. And as long as you're willing to do so from an authentic space, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to be in that space doing that work. Um, I'm a part of a transgender study right now at our school, and the lead on that investigation and grant is a cis hetero woman. So, I'm just really excited to be a part of that study and to be working with a group of people. And actually, most of them, I think, identify as cis and hetero. And I think there's one other non-binary student on the committee. But I would absolutely say yes, because a lot of times, we may not be fully aware of all of the things that do need to be brought to the surface in terms of study. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a flute player and a professor and an academician, but what I do not do is like survey and research that kind of stuff. And so I'm just now being trained for real in this type of statistical data surveying research. And it is mind blowing. But no, nothing I would do for passion and fun. Perhaps maybe input, on the questions, but it's just not my thing. And I'm not even sad about that. So I think that those people who are gifted in that area, your gift is needed, to help bring that information to light and to do so in a way that is sympathetic and compassionate to trans people. So. Oh my gosh, thanks. How can pride organizations offer support to academia? Hey, hit the folks up, because, I think sometimes people don't know where to go or how to get resources or what entities to connect to. Sorry, the question was, I think you see it in the chat, but how can pride organizations offer support to academia? And I think just by contact, and particularly making contact if those campuses have PRISM groups or LGBT student groups and their sponsors. That would be one thing. And then another thing would be maybe the Office of Equal Opportunity and Employment, because that might provide some spaces for faculty training and just even if it's just basic terminology. Most people don't know basic terminology that a lot of folks in the LGBT community are quite familiar with. And it's even becoming to a point where even certain spaces within the LGBTQ community are also like, I don't even know what this means and I don't understand it. You hear some pretty unintelligent conversation on Clubhouse sometimes. But, it's true. Like sometimes I wonder how folks are in a position in a forum to speak when they don't know the basic definitions of things, what triggering terms to avoid, or not understanding when they are using phrases bathed and cloaked in bias and they're repeating heteronormativity inside the community. I mean, it's horrible to me. And so I struggle with that, but I think that we need to have opportunity for education, even when it's just the most basic safe zone training that there is, it should be offered. So I think that would be good to reach out to those offices and those parts of campus and even student activities sometimes too.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I was getting ready to say, do you think that universities would let us come in? I know sometimes academia sometimes feels exclusive, right? Like you all are the experts, but I can say that Alicia has definitely have reached out. She actually reached out to us to partner to do things, but the thought of us reaching to universities and colleges to offer that kind of education and training is great. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. Sometimes we as Pride organizers kind of wait around for someone to ask us to come and really don't think about reaching out and looking for opportunities to bring that education to campuses. So thank you for that. Thank you for the question.
And I think a really dope way to do it is like through the campus pride events, because I think campus struggles with how to celebrate pride, or what are some ideas or ways that would be appropriate and impactful and visible for those students that are on campus to have a space that's truly celebratory of pride, and not just, hanging some banners up and being like, it's Pride Week, woohoo, and sending like one email out over campus orgs, not even to main campus. So people in main campus don't even know what's going on, just through the campus organization link. So like there's ways that campuses can learn how to celebrate pride in a setting, and maybe in an academic setting, maybe that's what can be developed, is ways to make it personal to those places. And how to unify those two things, because I think it's important to celebrate pride, and also to celebrate the fact that you're doing okay, you're all right, and you are where you're supposed to be in college and doing the things. And it is okay if you are identifying this way, or even questioning, or whatever you are. It is okay. Be that and still love yourself. And they need to have that affirmation, And I think others need to learn what it really means, not just to be tolerant. Like, we're so beyond tolerant. Like, folks are too sensitive in cancel culture for folks' energies. We have to learn how to be inclusive, because people can smell being tolerated, and it's just not good enough anymore. It's just not. Any other questions, guys? I think we might have reached the edge of our time, but I don't know if anybody has anything else.
The techie background
Super
is
dope.
what Alicia said about doing your project. Oh. Sorry, hearing me. About doing your project and whether or not it's appropriate. I think what's come up a lot over this conference is allyship, and what that means is using our tools and our abilities and our strengths to the benefit of everyone else. So
yes,
I cannot speak to your experience, but I could make you a terrific spreadsheet about it, and that's what my job is.
awesome. And that's exactly what I was saying. I just don't want to do stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that those things are not super important, and that those things don't help us move things forward. It helps strengthen us when we really do have real data from a real survey, or real conversations from real people, to push back against sometimes with this legislation. And that's what I'm learning is a lot of what we see in politics and legislation and culture is that oppressive theories based off of these narratives that people construct. And so that's one of the things that I personally am always like, stop telling these narratives, because this is not true for every human being. You know, just like stereotypes are not true for everybody. And so you're basing your political decisions out of narratives that you are supposing or imagining or assuming, because it's not necessarily proven true, or maybe just because it's true for one person doesn't mean it's true for an entire culture of people or group of people. And I think that's one of the things that we have to know are folks' real stories, real lives, and the different experiences that they're having, so that we can just be better as people. Well, I think that's kind of it for me, guys. But thank y'all so much for allowing me to come on and share my story and share my experience with you all.
You're always welcome. Thank you. Thank you. This was wonderful.
It was really great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
I'll see you all at the plenary. Don't forget.
No, we won't forget.
I got a spreadsheet I'm going to show you guys.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, sweet baby Jesus.
Bye.
Yeah.